I think we have Yiannis from IBM.
Hello. Yes.
You ready to go?
Hi. Yes. Should I start sharing my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So okay. So it's I just want to introduce a new framework, 1 year framework that we're working on. It's called Datashim, and just a bit of I would just want to give a very high level overview on what it does. Expose you to that, and just to explain also the reason I encountered Flyte and we started talking with Ketan and Haitam was that we're also part of Linux Foundation AI and Data. We're just adopted as just like a few months back, we were adopted as an incubating project. So the project originally started in IBM, but it's now IBM Research actually. But now it's LFAI Data Incubating Project, and it was called Dataset Lifecycle Framework, and now it's called Datashim. So that's the framework that I will be talking about. And we have started some discussions on how an integration could look like with Flyte. With just a initial design doc with some thoughts, and yeah, we're looking to dig a bit deeper onto that. But for today, just the introduction of what we do and some of our initial thoughts. So let me start. Okay. Okay. So the project is called Datashim, and it's if I had to describe it, would be that it's a meta framework that for Kubernetes and OpenShift workloads that enables and accelerates data access. So the motivation for the work that we started is that we feel that non-power Kubernetes users face complexities when accessing remote data. And I saw also today in the example about having the AWS CLI inside the container. So what we're trying to do is to take that out from the user and help them onboard Kubernetes in an easier manner. And as on the previous presentation from Yi, right, it's becoming increasingly common to store and retrieve data from remote stores, like a cloud object store, in machine learning and AI workloads, and in workflows, or any related framework. And also another gap that we identified was that the Kubernetes administrators do have the resources, the tooling to track resource usage in terms of CPUs, RAM, but not for data access. So yeah, so basically what we're doing is that it's what is like a meta framework, and currently we have first class citizens S3 and then FS datasets that are supported within the framework. Now, we are bringing one new CRD, one custom resource definition that we call it dataset. It's a bit of a legacy term because initially we're working with pre-populated, let's say, buckets or NFS directories. But if I had to give a name again, I would call it data source. I think it's more appropriate, and it's like a high-level abstraction from the PVCs, the persistent volume claims. And basically, what the framework does is that it orchestrates the provisioning for a PVC and the config mode needed for each dataset. So this means that the user defines a dataset, and under the hood, the framework provides a PVC that they can mount it without having dependencies on S3 or NFS clients or whatever. So yeah, that's what it does. And our goal is to basically provide the user experience. So the users won't have to install other plugins related to data access. We try to be extensible and to support all major types of data sources. There's no limitation to add any fancy packing store that the administrator wants. And also we're looking at performance improvements as well, especially considering caching and scheduling. So this is the high-level functionality, and yeah, I have the legacy term here, but I will change it. So from the user perspective, they just define a data set of the different formats, right? And then it's the dataset operator is the brain, I would say, for all this orchestration. It's a dataset operator that invokes the necessary CSI plugin. Now, CSI plugin, for those who don't know, it's like there are some plugins that help you create PVC out of a specific type of storage. So we are maintaining, we're hosting and maintaining some CSI plugins around S3, so Cloud Object Store and NFS. But again, we're looking to make it completely pluggable. And basically, for people who have worked with that, our goal is to be like something like JDBC for Kubernetes and data. And so basically, the dataset operator invokes the necessary plugin for the specific type of dataset or data source, and gives back a PVC that the user can just reference it in their pods. So we have as a convention that maybe you want to mount it on MNT datasets, right? And but the user can mount it wherever they want. Also, here I'm showing also that I'm giving hints about how the caching works. So while we don't do caching ourselves, and we don't plan to provide the core caching functionality ourselves, we're looking to provide the interfaces so that existing caching solutions can be pluggable in the framework. So basically, in the case where there is a caching plugin available for S3, it gets invoked, and then the user works with the cached version, let's say, of the dataset without them even realizing that they're accessing a cached version of that bucket. So imagine that you can build all sorts of functionalities on top of that. So you can have knowledge on what datasets are accessed by which pods. You can understand which datasets are hotter. And also one of the benefits that we believe there is that there can be two personas, right? One could be on a Kubernetes cluster. One would be the dataset provider. So it's the person who will create datasets and make them available to the end users. And the users, without caring what is the interface, how it's optimized, how to configure, they just use the datasets without them having explicitly to do something. Here I'm showing an example of the current spec for a dataset, how a dataset looks like. So you just define the type of dataset. So in this example, it's COS, Cloud Object Store. It can be NFS, and these are the specifics for the dataset. So we need at least the endpoint, the bucket, and the access keys, which now you can define it. We have updated the framework, and you can define it on a different on a separate secret and reference that. So we have experimented with all the flavors of S3 object stores that we know of. So IBM COS, Amazon, Nuba, Ceph, Min.io. It works without any limitations. And here it's just a helper that we have as a functionality. So basically, if the user doesn't want, so just to say that once you create the dataset test, once the framework kicks in and does the provisioning, you will get in the end the PVC called test as well. Now, if the user doesn't want to specify volumes and volume amounts on their pods, they can use it in this fashion. So there is the dataset dot any number, right? And then ID, make a reference to the initial dataset. and use as mount. So use as mount means that the user wants a mount point for that dataset and not the config map. So they can use it also as config map for the datasets that make sense. They might want to use the S3 API directly, so they just reference that and they don't use the PVC. So the benefits that we see from the framework is that data scientists and data engineers can focus on the workload development and experiments and not on configuring and tuning the data access. The storage providers can increase the adoption because the framework is extensible without having a negative impact on the user experience. And as I said, the data-oriented frameworks, which I think is what's the case with Flyte, right? We can build capabilities on top of that, and we feel that it's a declarative way of accessing and managing data sources. And I think that's all I have for introduction. Yeah, so this is my some links in the website and the GitHub and some pre-recorded demos. And just to give you a hint of what we are thinking of, my idea was that maybe it makes sense from the Flyte perspective to have inputs on the tasks as being datasets, right? So Datashim providing this infrastructure of connecting and exposing PVCs for Cloud Object Store and NFS, and the user will have an option to specify as an input for a task a Datashim dataset besides the one you already have in Flyte. So, but these are some very initial thoughts, and we're looking to get into more details and flesh out what could be done for Flyte as well. So this is, I have some backup slides in case some questions have something to do with what I showed, but yeah, please feel free to let me know.
And yeah, thank you, Yiannis, for going through this. Can you remind me if these are also writable PVCs, or are they mainly for?
Yes. So basically, these are, you can specify it as read-only if you want, but by default you can write. That's why I said that it's not exactly dataset anymore, because most of there are some cases on Kubeflow pipelines that they use it, that they just write the data on this dataset. It's more of a, I don't know, data connection, I would say, like something like this. So there's no limitation for writing. If you want, you can specify it as a read-only. So in the case of S3, we can mount a bucket as read-only as one of the options. Now we're exploring some ways to have, to separate a bit the policies. Maybe that makes sense to say, I want this data set of this type of policy, like, to group them in this fashion. But yes, it's up to you. So the answer is, yeah, if you want to have it read-only, you can have it read-only.
Yeah, so this can also be like an output of a workflow or a task, like you can process data and produce a data set.
Exactly. You can write. Yeah, and also some other ideas. We'll be talking with folks from Pachyderm. Maybe it makes some sense also to have like a sort of versioning, because when you execute a task, I would imagine, and you get an input of a data set, you might want to associate some versioning information with that. There's another thing that we can explore. But yeah, you can use it as an output. You can use it as a normal PVC without limitations.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, let me know if you have any questions. You can send an email, or yeah, I'm on the Slack channel of Flyte as well. Yep. So thanks everyone.
Cool.
Thank you.
Do you want to unshare your screen? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Yiannis. I think that's where we are today.
Can we, yeah, so a couple of plugs, I guess, for logistical things. Sandra sent a survey about the timing. If it's hard for you guys or other people in your companies to attend, we're like taking suggestions for when would be a better time. I think reach out to Sandra if you haven't seen the link for the survey. She can send it to you. And then the other thing is we're soliciting topics for future talks. I think we have a few lined up for the next few weeks. But if there is something you want to hear about or a concept in Flyte that's not very clear, you want us to dig deeper into, yeah, please let us know. Let Sandra know as well. But, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Back to you, George. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thanks everybody. Yeah, particularly if you have colleagues that for whom this time is difficult, and you want to suggest another one. There's been people, proposing, later in the evening on a PST time to see if that would be more convenient. So this is obviously for people that couldn't make the call. So if you have colleagues that are in that category, please don't feel free. We're going to leave it here unless we get, enough, community movement for another time. But we're certainly open to that if need be. Otherwise, thank you very much, Yiannis. Appreciate that. Thank you, Yi. And
yeah, I just had a quick suggestion regarding the topics, and I was thinking that might be very useful for people who want to adopt the platform for more use cases in their organizations. And that's basically to maybe highlight a few use cases for which it is highly suitable. So that's one area, like iterative machine learning development, or any kind of linear optimization, which has a lot of multiple simulation runs, or whatever those use cases are. You guys probably know the best. Laying down top 4-6 use cases, classes of use cases, that will be very useful. People who need to adopt the platform, they can just take a decision that yes, use case falls in one of those buckets, it's suitable for it, I can use it. And the second one where I kind of see a lot of questions and doubts in people's minds, like why Flyte, why not something else? Why not Airflow? Why not maybe Tecton's framework? Why not Conductor and all those kind of things? What are some of those places where it distinguishes itself from those platforms? How is it different? At least the top 5 ones. What is unique about Flyte? That might also be super useful. People will not have to kind of go ahead in a wild goose chase and try both the systems. That will be very useful as well. So I know these are big asks and probably will take weeks and months, but that will be something highly useful for people who just want to go and use the tool rather than actually going ahead into a costly and very broad evaluation mechanisms. So just a food for thought. I mean, I'm not expecting
Thank
answer
you.
tomorrow.
good feedback, Santosh, and you are not the first to ask that question. So
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, totally.
that's good.
Yeah, sounds
will-
good.
Yeah, well said.
Awesome.
That's something, the first point, Santosh, is something I'm working on, just like various ML pieces, and
Yeah.
I might demo something very soon.
Okay. All right. I mean, if you maybe at some point just want to set up a call with me, because I have spent some time trying to do this between Airflow and Flyte within Lyft. So yeah, I mean, it might be useful for us to maybe just join our approaches and see if we can evolve and come up with something better, more structured.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
I think as an external Flyte yet, I would have to say, because we have explored internally, we're looking at various workflow engines, right? And we're looking at the open source landscape a lot. I would have to, my feedback is that Flyte is one of the most polished efforts out there. Just my 2 cents on that, right? probably, yeah, it's a matter of, more
Mhm.
aggressive marketing. I don't know, but it's I think it's on the top frameworks for this from my initial, with my
Yeah.
short familiarity with the project.
Yeah, no, I mean, totally. I don't disagree with it. I totally agree with it, but just that we need to basically also land it into the use cases a little bit, in the
Yes.
sense that if it is a machine learning or a linear optimization, iterative modeling kind of problem, it's great. But I'll give you a counter example. If I just have to do a bunch of SQL tasks and join them together in a chain and execute it, regularly, it can be done in Flyte. But then the preference is very clear that Airflow is simple enough, more kind of, well established. A lot of people know it. So we have to balance it out a little bit.
No,
People
no,
will
I'm
not-
just
yeah.
no, I'm just amplifying what you say. I agree that maybe it needs a bit more campaigning or something like that. But I totally agree, right? That
Yeah.
needs to amplify a bit
Exactly.
the outreach, maybe. Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm really looking forward to help in this, and
Awesome.
I have it in mind, and whoever works with workflows, I'm trying to spread spread the message, right? So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, we definitely can have like maybe and this is for George and, so maybe we can just have a brainstorming session. We bring in our experiences there. It's like, what are the problems that we have heard from this set of data scientists, ML suite, and all the folks? What problem that they face in deciding between all the different options of orchestration tools that we have? And maybe if we can evolve a framework that, hey, this is the approach that we are going to take, and then at some point of time publish it. It will be in general useful for Flyte, and I think it will help the Flyte team also get focused. The use cases where it shines and it's really powerful, should probably just double down. And then the use cases which are like, barely fitting, it's okay to let people go and to like, the tools of their other tools possibly.
We can go to deeper dive. I think for simple ETL jobs where you're literally just trying to string together 3 SQL tasks or some Hive jobs, and if the whole thing fails, you can rerun it, and it's on a 24-hour time clock. Like Airflow is awesome for that, right? That's what it's built for. Does a great job. Where Flyte, where the birth of Flyte came when the complexity of the workflows, and in particular dealing with partial failures, became like the thing that kept people up at night. That's where the reliability and the ability to find what happens in partial failure scenarios at a programmatic level became kind of the driving force. So if you've got a large multi-computer job, multi-steps, they're not all they're heterogeneous, and you need the programmer, because they're application specific, you need to decide what happens in the case of partial failures and to be able to recover from those, and especially not repeat the work that you've done before. That's where it turns out that the reliability and the scalability of Flyte sort of became important, and sort of surpassed what was possible to do on top of Airflow. So that big mission critical jobs, that's where you if you need a simple ETL, and if it doesn't work, you just start it again and start and rerun it. Airflow's fine, and it's simpler to install, right? It's
right. The other place, the other place which I also found to be super duper important is that when you have dependencies on specific libraries, a lot of tools just mess you up. Like each time we have to upgrade one Airflow library, let's say TensorFlow or something, or even a Python library, it's a tremendous effort, because we have to unify everybody and force everybody that, hey, check with the latest version of this Python library. If your Airflow jobs work with it, fine, then only we'll upgrade. Or if we upgrade, it breaks down, it's your job. On Flyte, I heard from one of our engineers who said that these dependencies, particularly in the ML world, I can't get it straight for my own projects. I bring an image processing libraries for map processing from the wild. I sometimes even patch it and I use it. And somebody else is on a different version and has probably a different set of patches, and all of us can coexist very easily on Flyte. If I had to coexist on Airflow, my life would have been hell, just like unifying all those libraries and making them work against everybody's workflow. So that dependency isolation, I think, which comes from the containerization, is a very powerful construct as well.
That's just containerization, right? That's
exactly
the containerization, and Flyte is
absolutely
is completely container native. Like that's
absolutely.
It was built. You know, it was the third. The first version of Flyte was built on top of Airflow. The second version was built on top of AWS, and the third version was built on top of Kubernetes. So it is, you know, and that's all the benefits. Theirs are not added.
Absolutely,
They're just that's what you get from a container native system. So we just Flyte just leverages that and treats that as sort of a native concept. Like we don't know what's inside the container. All we know is all the data types that are being passed between tasks. And that's what gets checked. And what happens inside the container is a complete mystery to us, which is on by design.
Right, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of like, you know, some simple constructs that, hey, if you want to run jobs which has got their own dependencies, or like isolating their dependencies is important, go for Flyte. If you have like, you know, the places where you need to cache the intermediate results and restart from a point, or, you know, you want to kind of workflow which is checkpointed at multiple places and you don't have to start from the scratch if it fails, go for Flyte. So those, like, you know, 5-10 things, and people can map it rather hopefully relatively easily, and then decide that, okay, these are the places where Flyte will be really useful and powerful. I think that will go quite a long way. People do not have even these very simple concepts in their head at this point of time, I found.
Yeah, but I do think it's a mistake to say, you know, throw out Airflow and use Flyte for the simple things that Airflow is really good at. You know, like it's overkill for a lot of simple problems.
Yep, it is.
And that's fine. Like it's totally fine for Airflow to I mean, we're going to coexist with Airflow forever. Like Airflow is not going away anytime soon. It's really good at what it does. And they're just in sort of different spaces.
Yes.
For a converse there, as a user that's not tentatively in a massive organization, it's more ideal to not maintain multiple different clusters. And therefore, the second I cross the threshold of needing something Flyte related, ideally, I only want to maintain Flyte, and I don't want to also maintain Airflow. And therefore, then I need Flyte to also be good at the Airflow type things.
In principle, I totally agree with that. But, you know, I will cite you a counter example, and hopefully that clears the air over here. Do you know that Oracle has $40 billion in revenues and 7 SQL dialects today, and probably in its history, probably 25 plus dialects, in spite of the fact that SQL 92 has existed forever? And the point I'm bringing it because I give this argument again and again, and I have burnt my fingers trying to have a unified SQL between Hive and Impala, 2 engines developed by my previous organization, or at least Hive was not developed, but we are big contributors, and Impala we developed from scratch. We tried doing it. It's super hard. The idea is that when we try to use 2 tools which are really, really good in their subjective areas, and we just try to kind of pile the properties of one onto the other, and I see a strong pull for that even within Lyft. The problem is that you end up very often with a very mediocre kind of system, which is neither great here nor great there. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the challenge of it, that you have to go and evolve Flyte and take up more workloads, but not take too many. And that way you are best kind of, you know, set for long-term success in the places where it is kind of really great fit and brings a lot of value. I know what you're talking about, and a lot of people start in that direction. The problem of, like, you know, that kind of unification efforts that I've seen time and again, and unified SQL is one example. What I realize is that getting probably 50% of SQL queries from Hive to Impala or Impala to Hive is super easy. And people are highly encouraged by that 4 months or 6 months of progress. But next 30% takes 3-4 years to get it right. And the last 20% can take you decades. And that's probably the reason why Oracle has never achieved it. Otherwise, it would have been its humongous interest to have a single unified SQL across all its systems and making sure that all of them work right really to the best performance and scalability and all those other requirements as well. But it has never happened. And there are papers which people have written trying to attempt it. And it hasn't happened for a fact. So you can dig more into it. But the idea is that similar efforts over here will probably also unlikely to go far. So we should be selective which use cases we bring in, which we probably do not. But anyway, it's a big debate. I don't want to kind of blabber on it too much. But
yeah, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? I just wanted to make sure, there's the pain point of maintenance from things. So there's a lot of benefits to not targeting too many use cases as well. So
yeah, balance is probably the name of the game here.
Yeah, as long as we're cognizant of the things we need to balance.
Yes. Awesome. Anyway, I mean, as a follow-up, if we can have maybe a session just to kind of where we all bring our perspective where Flyte kind of shines, what use cases, what core requirements, and then maybe compile them together. Probably that 1 hour exercise would also yield something substantial enough to begin with.
Good discussion. And thanks, Austin, for speaking up. I think you speak for a lot of people. The Flyte team has a lot of work to do to sort of bring the simplicity and ease of use that Airflow has pioneered, and give all the goodies that Flyte provides without the mental complexity and the overhead that sometimes comes with dealing with just a big containerized system as the Kubernetes ecosystem sort of evolves and is kind of born out of it's a brand new paradigm for dealing with cloud computing, and we have a bunch of work as an industry to bring ease of use to Kubernetes. That's got work ahead of us so that you can have the advantages of both. But I think right now we can't claim that we're there yet, and we are very, very actively working on it. But we've still got work to do. And
absolutely.
And Santosh, I'm smiling. I was at Microsoft when ODBC was created to first try to solve a database engineering problem, and I could not agree with you more that the reason why there's so many databases is because at the edge they do different things, and if you try to unify them, you miss those edges. And
and I was telling somebody in my organization, that's where you cannot replace intelligence with experience.
Right.
You may have the smartest grads coming out of college, but unless they have burned their fingers, they will not understand it. I've burned my fingers, I can tell you. And so have you.
Yep. So, and for those very reason, I think even in big organizations, I think Airflow and Flyte are going to coexist for a long time for those two reasons, even though it's a huge pain in the neck and we wish it was a grand unifying thing. But the reality is there are different sweet spots for the tools. And
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. It's a lot of fun, and appreciate the feedback. And we'll talk in a couple weeks. I think Sandra has already pre-posted the agenda items for the next few weeks. So read down if you want to see, and if you want to get on the list, send her, Keith, or me a note, and we'll add you to the agenda, and you can show off your stuff.
There's a link to the survey, George, in the chat if you'd like to fill it out or forward it to anybody who's not able to attend these times. Yeah, please do that.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.